Aloha.
Aloha.
We're your hosts,
Clash Rant.
and I'm Ruby Gomez.
And this is the Delirious Minds podcast. Welcome, everyone, to the final episode of Delirious Minds. We have looked at 7 different tests over the course of this podcast, and today we're going to be discussing our results and how they apply to our lives.
We started with the 16 personalities test, for which I got the advocate, but I'm usually the mediator, and Clash got the commander, but he's usually the protagonist.
Then we took the Enneagram test, for which I am the achiever and Ruby is the helper.
After that, we looked at the high 5 test to determine our top 5 strengths. Mine were empathizer, philomath, thinker, brainstormer, and catalyst. Clash's were philomath, storyteller, winner, thinker, and strategist.
Next, we dove into the ocean, or the Big 5 test. Ruby and I were both high in extroversion, openness to experience, agreeableness, and conscientiousness, and relatively low in neuroticism.
Following the Big 5 test, we looked at the visual DNA Who Am I quiz. I am the alchemist, and Clash is the captain.
And then we took my favorite quiz, the Hogwarts sorting quiz. And I am a Slytherin, and Ruby is a Hufflepuff.
Finally, we took a look at the Are You a Soldier, a Poet, or a King test. This time, I got King, but I'm really a poet. And Clash got Poet, but he is a King.
So how does all of this apply to our lives? Why is any of this important?
Each one of these tests gives us a closer look at who we are. Obviously, some of these tests are silly and only for fun.
And clearly, not all of them are all that accurate either.
But we have learned a great deal about our strengths, and possibly even more about our weaknesses.
As 2 individuals learning how to be adults and still just learning how to be people, we can harness this information to not only better ourselves, but also as tools for life.
So let's talk about what we learned and what it means for us. For the 16 personalities test, I am the mediator, but this time around I got advocate.
And I'm the protagonist, but I got the commander on this podcast.
So in the past, we have taken this
Multiple times.
Lot of times,
So
and
many.
I've gotten the campaigner before, which it doesn't really quite make sense for me because you're more extroverted to be a campaigner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess when I am feeling my most extroverted self, I can see that being me.
Mm-hmm.
And then this last time we took it for the podcast, I got advocate, which I don't think is a bad descriptor of me. It's pretty close to mediator, I'd argue.
Right.
But there's just some specifics in mediator that leads me to still agree that mediator is mine. When I'm at my best, when I'm feeling my best self, like feeling the most like who I am,
And apparently not taking it on the podcast.
and not taking it on a podcast and overthinking it, I get mediator. But when I'm at my lowest, I'll take it again and I'll get logician. And the difference between logician and mediator is that mediators mark higher on feeling and the logicians mark higher on thinking. So I think that that's a very interesting thing to think about how much your, maybe not necessarily your personality, but how you think about things can change based on your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually kind of a very good representation of how important mental health is to how you.
They can actually change that much.
Yeah.
And I think it does make sense that if you're depressed, that feeling would kind of drop because you're not going to be feeling as many things because a lot of times depression is that
numb.
numbness. So
Yeah.
that would make sense.
All 3 of the ones that I've gotten, well, I've gotten 4 results, right? And all 3 of the ones that aren't mediator are just one step away from mediator.
Just going in a different direction each time.
It's just the mediator is the center of it, and I, for those reasons, feel very strong.
Yeah, it kind of just reinforces that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of the same thing. Every single time I've taken this until I took it on the podcast, I've gotten protagonist, the ENFJ. That is always what it is. Took it here on the podcast, and I got the commander, which is similar to yours, is just the switch of feeling over thinking. And when I do get the protagonist, my feeling and thinking are very close. It's like at one point it was 51-49. It's been like 54-40, whatever it is, 46. It is pretty close to 50-50 anyway. So we think probably overthinking things, which would make sense for thinking to go higher in that scenario, would do that. But I do think that just in general, like, people are going to relate to different versions of these, like to different archetypes here and stuff. And I kind of feel like it could be like different versions of yourself anyway.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, I think I talked about this during the episode, but I feel like the commander could very just easily be my personality specifically at like work or like in school. Because I think that makes sense because I am very
preparing yourself for different social circles. So yeah, I see that.
But like I am very logical and I think like I'm very analytical about the way I think for most things, and especially at work and school when feelings aren't easily involved in it. However, just in life though, I think the protagonist makes more sense overall because in the most important scenarios, feeling does beat out thinking.
Yeah.
And I have seen that happen enough to know that it's true, so that I know the protagonist is really what it is. And
I feel like that also applies to me, but just for different reasons, sort of. But like feeling being a big thing for me, clearly.
Right. Yeah.
We just took the Soldier Poet King test and it said love is where you feel for me.
Yep.
So yeah. And then you were talking about there like it possibly being different versions of yourself. And I feel like that kind of applies to what we talked about in the Hogwarts episode.
Right.
Because at one time I was a Gryffindor and now I'm very firmly a Hufflepuff. So just different versions and different values at different times. So,
and I think overall, just for life, your personality is not static. It is constantly changing and being influenced by different environments, situations, other people, everything.
I agree.
So these could change. Yeah. Like in 10 years, if we take these, they might all be different. Some of them might be different. There's a chance that none of them are, but things can change though.
Yeah, people change and they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And this is such a random thing to interject about it, but that's the thing about like relationships is that you gotta find someone who changes with you.
Right.
And doesn't go in a different direction or just
and that happens sometimes in relationships. You will change in different directions and that's when it stops working.
Yeah.
So for this one, you got the helper and I got the achiever. And for me, how I was just basically saying like my overall and like life personality versus like work personality. I feel like the achiever fits more into like the work personality because the achiever is like, you know, like trying to be the best and like goal setting and like doing all these things. And I feel like that is how I approach school and work, and that it fits the commander. But I do still think the achiever is like how I can approach like social relationships or like an overall attitude towards life, because like I am trying to like be the best and like I want people to like feel special to people for like being better.
Yeah.
Which is not exactly how I want to phrase it, but I think you get what I mean.
I definitely think just
like standing
like
up.
Even without analyzing that whole Ennead type, just the words the achiever just applies to you so much.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
So I feel like for the EnneagramUniverse.com part of this, it has like a very good breakdown of what like healthy versus unhealthy version of this Ennead type has. And like for me it talks about like begging for love is such a painful way to live that they get angry because it like basically what it's saying is that they feel like they keep giving and giving and giving and then nobody ever gives back and they feel very like used and stuff.
That's definitely happened, and
it has happened. And I think that the drawings that this website has about this archetype is very fitting because it's a person with like a piece of them taken out and they're offering it. They're like giving it away. And then like the next one for like the unhealthy version is like they're missing a lot of pieces and they're just more pieces are being taken away. And then it talks about like the healthy version about like just accepting that you're meant to love and like healing about it. Like you need to heal and not feel like you deserve love back and that's a thing that I feel like I struggle with a lot. What the website says about it is learning how to love better. That's the whole thing.
And I think that's something you have said.
And that's what I
something you want to do.
Like.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a weird thing about like needing love and learning to love yourself too.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But also there's the balance of self-respect and not just like driving yourself into the ground for the sake of someone else.
Exactly. Kind of looking at mine then for the unhealthy versus healthy. First of all, I just want to say I feel like generally I am at the average one that it says, which is just like the basic level and like the things it talks about. Because it talks about the unhealthy Enneagram type being like, for me, having too high of standards, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there's even like it says they start to like lie about themselves, fooling themselves and others, like, and then like you start just projecting. It's kind of like imposter syndrome in a way, but like almost reversed, like you're doing it to yourself, I guess. And I don't think I'm usually there. I feel like I have had some of that at some of my most overwhelmed states possibly, but overall not. But what's interesting to me is that when it talks about the healthy Enneagram type 3 is that it says they have already learned there is nothing to win, that they already have what's essential themselves. And it's less about like this trying to be the best and more about helping others to kind of see the best in themselves type thing. And they inspire type 3s to be better, but they're not their main source of nurturing. I don't know. Yeah, they're like more focused on helping others and less about this like endless push for success. And I feel like I know that that's more mature basically to like think like that and know that like being better isn't everything and stuff like that. And I feel like I will eventually get to that point later, but like right now I'm just young and kind of whatever. And I think it makes sense to be just like the average Enneagram type versus the healthy type right now.
I think so too.
But I think that's interesting to watch like as I continue to like grow.
Yeah, that's true. For me here, because I just read this bit, you are an unconditional love source since you are not at war with yourself anymore. You're unconditional to you. There is no broken mirror now. No more sharp tips in your reflection. There are no threats. Isn't it interesting that your unhealthy version just shows you that the more you resist to love yourself, the less you are able to feel and receive love? You have the key, you can use it to close the door or open it.
Wow.
And I feel like that's so real.
Yeah.
And I've been struggling with that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And like I feel like that's another thing with like my mental health cycles is that like when I'm happiest and everything, like I feel like I can love the best. And then I get unhappy and start having issues with myself.
Right.
And then my ability to love others is affected, which has been a big problem. So it's a weird thing I have to grapple with. But I actually really like taking this test. I feel like
because this one is one we weren't as familiar with, and it ended up being one of the most insightful ones.
Yeah. And we took it through Truity, which was a little less detailed.
Yeah.
Because I think you have to pay for like the full results, but
right.
Enneagram Universe actually like really breaks it down pretty well, and you end up in like what are these called?
The triads.
There's the wings and the triads.
Oh, right.
So like I think that we were talking about the triads. I don't know what the wings are. The wings are like
it's the opposites. Is it a circle?
I don't know. Anyway,
we're in the same triad though.
We are in the same triad,
which makes sense.
We're 2 and 3, so we are in the heart or the feeling triad,
which makes entire sense.
And I feel like that just entirely backs up us being the protagonist and the mediator.
Exactly.
So, because the other ones are head or thinking triad and the gut or instinctive triad, and that's not.
Yeah, the fact that we weren't in the thinking, especially, and then even exactly. I also think it kind of goes to our soldier, poet, king results then too, in a way.
Yeah, I agree. So the next one we took was the high 5, and I have it on my other tab here. So that's just 5 greatest strengths you have. Like you're supposed to, I think it's supposed to be for like the work environment and stuff, but like
I was gonna say it feels more like school and work and stuff, and
like not your professional strengths.
Yeah. I feel like Yeah, because we did, the first time both of us did this was like for school. It was like kind of showing you like how best you learn possibly, or like your attitude and stuff at school.
My number one is empathizer now, and that's so interesting. In the last,
And that's
like,
kind of the
6,
Gryffindor
7
Raven
years.
or Gryffindor Hufflepuff shift is probably what that is.
Yeah, that I think so, cause empathizer Hufflepuff, but like I'm just thinking about how far I've come from, because I took it in 8th grade, and
Mm-hmm.
now I'm going into my junior year in college, so
Mm-hmm.
that's like such a transition, and I'm still a film math, my number two. So
I mean, it is like lifelong learning, so you'd think that it would
yeah,
lifelong be.
yeah,
But yeah, I know because what I kind of wanted to talk about with these ones is the two that we both share is Philomath and Thinker, right?
yeah. Philip math is my 2 and thinker is my 3.
And Philomath is my 1 and Thinker is my 4.
Interesting.
So it's kind of yeah. Um, yeah. So Philomath is yeah love of learning, exploring many interests, follow new paths, acquire as much knowledge as possible. Um, but yeah, so like that's kind of one of the first things we bonded over when we met anyway.
Yeah,
Was kind of that like match of attitude towards learning and like towards school
and like using like logic, like we
yes.
liked that we
Mm-hmm.
like so this is like what it's like to match wits.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is interesting. That's the thing that we bonded over,
Right.
and that is still core strengths for us.
Yes, exactly. You said that well. And then we also match Thinker, which is kind of similar. And it says mental activity, intellectual discussions, and time alone and reflection, which we definitely both do the time alone and reflection thing, but then we talk about it with each other. So that's the intellectual discussions then too.
Yeah. So once again, empathizer. I think that backs up the last 2 results of being mediator and being helper. And on stream for the 16 personalities, I got advocate, and that I feel like applies with empathizer too. But
right. Yeah, for this one, I don't know if there's much that really goes to prove my 16 personalities or anything. I feel like this is kind of more like work personality, so maybe it would fit with the commander better in this case. And I feel like this, for that, and also with the achiever, fits very well because I also have strategist on here, which is pretty self-explanatory, I feel like. And then I also have winner, which is turns any mundane task into a game or challenge because the feeling of competition is essential for them.
That's so accurate.
And feel lost in environments that have no defined measure of success. So that kind of goes towards the wanting to be able to compete, to like be the best type thing, or to have some measure of success, like it said. Like that is very achiever type thinking. Yeah. So that makes sense. And then I also just on here have storyteller, which I think makes sense for my chosen major and career path. So whatever. And speaking in public and stuff like that is less like, that's more surface level, but still true. So
I think it's interesting that you have that, considering that
you write stories.
I write stories and stuff. And
you're the story writer. I'm the storyteller. So,
but like you saying that makes me think about the ones that I do have, because I have empathizer, philomath, thinker, brainstormer, and catalyst. And like I'm just thinking about how that applies to me being a poet. Like not just like, I'm not talking about Soldier Poet King. I mean like I'm actually a poet. I write poems. So like I think it's funny that one of the things on here is called Thinker because of the Thinker statue. Like it just feels so like poetic. So yeah. So the next one was the Big Five.
And I feel like for the basic one, ours were pretty similar for this. Yeah, like there was some difference, which we can pretty clearly identify why. Like my extroversion is definitely higher than yours, but like you've definitely gotten a lot more extroverted,
I suppose. But yeah, for you, your extroversion should be high. Yeah. I'm surprised with how high mine is, if I'm being honest.
I think, yeah, that's fair.
And it makes sense that my openness to experience is higher than yours. And then agreeableness makes sense. I mean, I feel like it would make more sense if we were a little closer, because I'm higher than yours on agreeableness, but like
Yeah.
I feel like you can be more agreeable than me in certain situations.
I know. I feel like I guess that probably just depends on scenarios for the most
Yeah.
part, but yeah.
But I guess you're a little more opinionated sometimes, so that might be making sense.
Mm-hmm.
But then back to the first one here, which is neuroticism,
Yeah.
is the one that confuses me for us because I feel like you're a lot more neurotic than I am.
I think we talked about this during the thing, and
Mhm.
basically because on this test, neuroticism was more about like a variety of emotions and like having strong emotions about other things, and for most of that I was not agreeing with it, but you were. And the only reason my neuroticism does go high is because of anxiety and overthinking and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So because obviously I'll beat you on that one by itself, but with the, I forget somewhat what the questions were exactly, but just stronger emotions, maybe like some anger or something, other things like that. But still overall ours are very the same, very very much the same. And I think it's weird that like other people could have such, I get mostly lower, they could have lower percentages than us, like. And I think it has a, I'm struggling to talk right now apparently. I feel like a lot of it has to do with like nurture and like how we were raised, and I feel like we were raised in pretty similar, I guess, environments.
But what I really would like to compare this to is our results for the next test that we took.
Right, this one is interesting.
So the next one was the visual DNA, Who Am I?
Which was just pictures.
And I think that with all the other quizzes being text, it was very refreshing to be able to do the picture one.
Right.
And it was just fun.
I do think maybe being pictures does make it less accurate, possibly.
Definitely think it's less accurate.
Yeah.
Because it's too subjective.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're applying your own meaning and you have less context, and anyway, whatever.
So, interestingly, you once again scored lower than me in neuroticism on this one. Why is your agreeableness so low for this?
That's what I was saying. Mine's so low, but what's even funnier is because your conscientiousness then is 16 when mine is 96.
That's weird.
That seems extreme. I don't know. I don't think yours would actually be that low.
I don't know what pictures I would have picked that would
have
changed that. So
yeah.
Oh, my openness is higher again. So, and then the extroversion I think makes more sense with this one because I have a 54.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, I think that one's possibly more accurate, I guess, but.
So this one had archetypes, and I was the alchemist.
And I was the captain, which I guess leader. I like that enough.
I think the alchemist sounds cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that means. It doesn't like have connotation to it, and the website for the visual DNA Who Am I test doesn't actually have the archetypes listed and explain them or anything. And I think that's a little weird because I feel like I really like to compare them. Like, what makes the alchemist? Like, what scores? Because there's 5 different categories. Like, where do we get these archetypes from?
Right.
Because we're assuming that like my scores made me fall into this category, but there's 5 different scores.
Yeah, it's like, do they break them into 3 quadrants each, basically? Yeah. And then there's like, that's a lot, 15 different ones, I guess.
But I did really like that test, so.
Yeah, that was definitely like chill and fun. But yeah.
But if you're taking any of these tests for personality assessment reasons,
this is not the most.
This is not the one you should take. No. The last 3 tests we took aren't.
Yeah, that's why we left them to the end, was they were more like for fun after we had established our like personality, I guess.
So then we took the Hogwarts sorting quiz.
Yes, which is my favorite.
He's a Slytherin.
Yes.
I'm a Hufflepuff. Right here it says Hufflepuffle.
Hufflepuffle.
So.
Mm-hmm.
So
we've already referenced this within this episode alone, and we've referenced this probably more than any other, actually.
Yeah.
Going through these other ones.
So the helper, the mediator, having empathizer as my number 1 strength. I'm a Hufflepuff.
Yeah.
Very clearly. In the past, in like my younger high school years, I used to be a Gryffindor, and that's an interesting thing how people change over time, because I was very much about like honor and stuff and like doing the right thing, but it's interesting how since 8th grade, 8th to 9th, probably 10th grade, I've transitioned to being a Hufflepuff, and we can see how that happened over the course of time with how my life has gone. And it's interesting to me because the things that I valued as a Gryffindor kind of like manifested into me being a Hufflepuff, because I wanted to help people and I wanted to do right by people. So now being a Hufflepuff and caring about my friends and just trying to love them right, you know, love them the best I can.
Right.
It makes a lot of sense. So
I feel like Slytherin doesn't seem like it would align with the protagonist as easily, just because Slytherins are like more like harsh kind of and like self-preserving and stuff, and less like that, I guess. But Slytherin definitely fits with like the achiever, just because Slytherin is very much about ambition and resourcefulness, and that definitely fits in with the achiever and like success in general, and like the trying to be the best and having goals and all of that. It kind of just reinforces that too.
Yeah.
And again, like I feel like, I don't know if I said this in the episode already before, but like for how random and fun this one is, we reference it like more than any other, and I don't know if it's just because it's easier to, but it just seems to like affect aspects of our life so much more often. And like how you can reference like, oh, I'm being such a Hufflepuff right now, or like, oh, I'm doing this because I'm a Hufflepuff. You can like say that, and like same with me, like doing this.
It's so just like perfect use for those situations.
Like the entire attitude I've had towards school is very much just, I'm a Slytherin, and that's why. Like it's so, I don't know, it just makes so much sense for no reason. Like it shouldn't. It's just some like fictional book about wizards.
For the sorting quiz we took the all possible questions one, and it can show the percentages of how much house applies to you.
Yeah, percentage of each house. Like.
And our percentages are backwards.
Yeah.
So mine goes Hufflepuff, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and then Slytherin's the lowest. And I would say Hufflepuff, Gryffindor, and Ravenclaw are all pretty close, which makes a lot of sense because of how I was at school.
Right.
So like Math being my number 1 and Ravenclaw still being at 68 makes sense. Or it was a number 1 when I was in 8th grade, but then it's still my number 2 now. So
right.
And then the difference between my Hufflepuff and Gryffindor is a difference of 6%. My Hufflepuff is 78, and then 72 for Gryffindor.
Does make sense.
Yeah. So.
I mean, so yeah, so with mine then being literally just backwards, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, Gryffindor, and then Hufflepuff farther down, that also makes sense. And even same thing, because Ravenclaw's my second, and I feel like I easily could be a Ravenclaw, but there are just a few different things that I think would change it. Like, I feel like I can act like a Ravenclaw, but a lot of times that action is driven by ambition, which is Slytherin. But Ravenclaw is definitely my second, and like you said on the high five, me having Philomath and Thinker and then also Strategist all kind of makes sense for Ravenclaw too then. And even Winner at that point could be for Ravenclaw and for Slytherin, but obviously more for Slytherin with the ambition and resourcefulness, I guess, and determination sometimes goes with that one, but it also goes with Gryffindor. So, but just like even high five, we share 2 of them. We're in the same triad for the Enneagram. We're in the same like faction for the 16 personalities. We're both diplomats. Like we are so similar. So it is weird for this one how it's so backwards, and this is possibly like one of the more accurate ones then.
Both diplomats, both in the heart triad. So
right, but I guess this is less about like feeling and more like it's just, I guess it's just giving you different traits to categorize yourself by, and just because of the way it is, it's different, but it is interesting.
For the last one, the Soldier Poet King quiz, I got the king this time for the podcast,
and I got the poet,
which is weird because that's backwards.
Yep.
Because I normally get the poet, and as we discussed in the episode, it makes so much more sense that I am the poet.
Yeah.
And he normally gets the king, and it makes so much more sense that he gets the king. So
again, I don't know what causes the switch between some of them when we're recording, but
I think it's interesting. I don't know quite which counts for which, and like I'm sure there's a way that we can figure it out, but it's not obvious. And I think the thing about, I referenced it earlier, but it says your love is where you feel, and like that just applies so much to all my other things that I've gotten, like being the helper and the mediator and empathizer, all of that. So
yeah, I was gonna say it makes sense because like with how like personality stuff like between these tests can be very different. Yeah. But then the one thing that we do keep referencing is with feeling and stuff, and especially with you with your traits is love. A lot of it just comes back to that, which makes sense why you have the love is how you feel. And then for me, I guess it's mostly with the protagonist being like my feeling does beat my thinking when it's most important and when it comes to love, because for me on this for the king, for Soldier Polar King, it says love is what you breathe, or however it says it. And I feel like that makes sense because love has been such like a like such an important part of my life and like just everywhere for such a long time, I guess. Like inescapable.
To me, knowing you, that makes so much sense.
Right.
But
not knowing me,
you saying that and then having been Slytherin with Hufflepuff your lowest is such an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, no, because it's weird because like Hufflepuffs like value friendship, and it's like it's not like I don't value friendship. It's just I guess different the way it goes into like a personality thing.
Maybe I could have still been a Gryffindor if like the hat had actually sorted me, because the things that I think are the right thing and honorable is through my friendships and stuff. Yeah. And I feel like that could be a thing with like your ambition a little bit, and you're just ambitious about love, and that's probably more about like the romantic side of things. But
yeah, kind of how the achiever in love was still like trying to be the best type thing. So yeah, I feel like that does work.
I don't have much more to talk about with that, but I did actually want to go back and talk a little bit more about the 16 personalities one.
I feel like, thinking about that, the strengths and weaknesses on the 16 personalities and then the healthy versus unhealthy Enneagram work very well together and complement each other because they're both very accurate. Because like for mine, looking at my weaknesses, it says like unrealistic, overly idealistic, which can relate to the achiever weaknesses of like having such high standards for yourself that it's not possible, and then feeling bad about it because of that. Also with the achiever, that wanting to be the best, one of my weaknesses for the 16 personalities is condescending. It says like they enjoy teaching others, but sometimes it can come across as patronizing. And like that was saying, the achiever like they like to help people in a healthy state, are able to do so well, but like maybe it comes across as condescending if you aren't doing it healthily.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
So my biggest strength, the first thing they list for the mediator for strength is empathetic,
which is you're the empathizer.
I'm the empathizer for the high five. So that's interesting. But then I have generous, open-minded, creative, passionate, and idealistic. And I don't know how much those all apply to me, but like that makes sense. Yeah. Open-minded.
Open to experiences.
Open to experiences. Generous. The helper is literally giving part of themselves away, and that's how I feel about love. Like, love is a labor, and it's we're both in the heart triad. We both agree that it's like the thing that is worth it. Emotionally vulnerable, like the Enneagram universe talked about how like the helper feels like they're constantly giving themselves away and not getting anything back, and I feel like that applies here.
Right.
A lot of these are things that I do need to work on, and it's like understanding that about myself is so powerful because it's not like about needing to be a better person necessarily. It's more about my own happiness and like learning to love myself, because then I can love others to the best of my ability.
Kind of, it's more, I'm just saying this as a kind of a recap, I guess, but just like kind of going off of everything we were just talking about, is it's just really interesting. And what is helpful about all of this is that like taking especially multiple of these and all the ones that we're looking at, and possibly others if we don't know about them, just having all of the results because they just work so well together, it's like this like web of like tools. They all work together really well, and you can use them in tandem to like do things to work on yourself, or to like know how to avoid certain situations that might make things difficult if you can't deal with them the right way.
Information is power.
Yeah.
The nice thing about it is that it gives our self-reflection some more structure.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. If you have interesting insights on any of these tests and their results, please let us know. This podcast has been awesome to make, and we're so thankful for all of you for coming along on this journey through our minds with us.
This was, after all, the first official Delirious Studios project. We're glad you could be here for its creation, and we hope to bring you guys more projects like this in the future.
Hopefully, you'll join us for those journeys too.
So thank you for joining us and making this podcast Delirious Minds.